All right. Gonna get started off with a little bit of music here. A little bit of meme wonder. Oh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Body Lock Podcast. It is your boy, Nicholas Vera, and I'm here with my co-host, Siri Kari. Siri, say what's up to the people.
Hey everybody, good to see you again.
And real quick, we have a whole bunch to get to this weekend across promotions, MMA, bare knuckle boxing. We're talking about it all this week. Had a little bit of hiatus because I was on a vacation. Some stuff that I had to take care of. But we are gonna be on the weekly podcast. I'm telling you, this summer, we're gonna make a killing. Gonna be back on the writing tip, back on everything. Trust me, it's gonna be there. Great content coming soon. And let's just hop right into it. First off, I want to preface this with saying I went to Bellator 222. I just happened to be in the area. I was drinking in Jersey City, and then my uncle knew a guy who knew a guy who owned a bar, who knew a guy who talked to some dude. I ended up getting some pretty cheap, affordable tickets at a nice price, and I go to Bellator, after a day of just being awash in, Jersey shenanigans, and I have to say, really fun show, really good production, and a lot of great fights that ended up coming out. I got there a little bit after the Aaron Pico fight, so I wasn't able to catch that live, but obviously, I knew all the happenings that was there. Dylan Dennis fought, Chael Sonnen retired, but the one I wanted to start off real quick with was Rory McDonald. He actually had a 5-round hard-fought decision victory over Neiman Gracie. And I really thought that fight had it all. I don't know if you watched the fight, but every single round it felt like Rory had to figure his way out of the Neiman Gracie Rubik's cube, and every round Gracie was trying to set him up with a different submission. And I saw some people say on Twitter that Rory McDonald out-grappled Gracie. Nothing like that. I think Gracie was definitely the superior grappler, but Rory knew what to do instinctively, defensively. He trains with Faraz Sahabi. There's obviously a high pedigree there in itself. But you could tell, who was more comfortable in the stand-up, Rory, and who was more comfortable in the grappling, obviously, Neiman Gracie. But it was a really great display. Obviously, it was a different fight from the John Fitch fight, not as demanding, but definitely technically still very intriguing. Rory defends his title once again, and now he's on his way. I can't remember. To fight Douglas Lima, for the welterweight title in that long-awaited rematch. Siri, what'd you make of that fight?
I'm happy for Rory. I really do like Rory McDonald as a fighter. I think that because he lost some of his biggest fights in the when he was in the UFC, he's always underappreciated. And even though Bellator puts on great fights, there's always that stigma that's where the UFC fighters that don't have a shot at the title anymore go. I thought Rory did well. He showed that he's still good at the stuff he did well before. Yeah, he can fight behind a good solid jab. His boxing is measured. I do appreciate that he kept escaping from submission attempts because if you let Rory McDonald hold you down, you're going to get blasted eventually. It's just his top game is so good.
Mm-hmm.
So, credit to Gracie for not letting that be overwhelming, but he's also a Gracie. You don't expect them to get overwhelmed from the guard.
Right.
It was a good win. I mean, it lets me know that Rory is still Rory.
Right.
There's no change from that.
And I was really impressed by Neiman too, because he was hanging around. It wasn't like he got outclassed. Definitely lost the fight. But he looked like, give him 2-3 years, he'll be back with a whole new game plan, renewed skill set, and I think he could take that. And especially Rory 3 years down the line. And man, it was just a great fight all around. And I wanted to before we move on to the rest of the card, I wanted to touch on that. Gracie's guard was just impenetrable, and you're right. Rory has a great top game, and when he was in side control, he was utilizing the elbows really well. Even in half guard, he was able to do stuff. But in Gracie's full guard, he just couldn't really find, the angles to do the damage that he wanted to do, and that was frustrating Rory a lot. But definitely, I thought his bread and butter was in the stand-up. And he did find some great head kicks, leg kicks. His left hook to the body and to the head was finding the mark. And overall, it was a great win, and I'm just glad to see him, kind of poise himself in the right way heading into this Douglas Lima fight, which we know will be a barn burner. I don't want to get into the preview for that too much. Obviously, when we get to that card, we'll dive more in depth. Another fight I wanted to touch on was the retirement of Chael Sonnen. Obviously, Lyoto Machida came in looking great. I thought what Chael Sonnen said in the post-fight was very interesting. He said, I knew Lyoto Machida was going to win in his spots with the stand-up, but I knew it was over for me once I was losing it in my spots, when he was getting out-grappled, when he was getting, just out-wrestled in ways that, didn't seem like it would happen on paper. And then, lo and behold, Lyoto Machida was the superior fighter on multiple fronts. And it definitely, a bittersweet ending to the career of the American Gangster. But I will say this, of any fighter, apart from Darian Caldwell, which, by the way, I was, for some reason, I was sitting in, like, the Darian Caldwell section when Darian Caldwell came out. Literally all of Rahway, New Jersey was just in my section just yelling for him. So it sounded like he was the biggest favorite. But Chael Sonnen, by far, the biggest favorite out of anyone on the card. He's just he appeals, he appeals to everyone. He has the pedigree. He's been around. Possible Hall of Famer, honestly, depending on where you put his.
It's always interesting to me how popular Chael is. I know he does podcasts. I know he's outspoken, but like, I feel like the reasons fans like him now have nothing to do with why we like him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like for us, what Chael was the first guy who really gave Anderson Silva trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was always just this, before he was kind of a joke for calling out people well below or well above his pedigree. Mm-hmm. He was, I would say, possibly the best pure wrestler in the league, because he didn't have a stand-up to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got a double leg on you, he'd take you down. And so we appreciate that. Yeah, he kind of became a joke, but we remember when he was good. Why do people like him now?
It's that X factor. I mean, he has the gift of gab. Like, there's no way around it. He knows his way around a microphone. And I think obviously Bellator, they don't have a McGregor, so they need to supplement whatever they can to like get someone as charismatic as him. And really, truly, when it comes to the art of selling a fight, nobody can do it better at Bellator as of right now. And I hope in some capacity Chael Sonnen can coach that in the future. That is like,
what is that?
I don't know. I think like
he's coaching something.
Like yeah, a multitude of things, but like just that ability to describe yourself and believe in yourself and emphatically break down how you're gonna beat an opponent or show up to fight night. I think
he's basically gonna give like public speaking classes for Bellator fighters.
Yeah, I mean,
the same way they hold like financial courses for new NBA players so that they don't go broke immediately.
See, I would hope they try something. It would be cool to see Scott Coker try to incorporate him in that because again, obviously Rory McDonald is his own fighter, Douglas Lima is their own fighter, but I think both of them could benefit from the gift that Chael has. Obviously, it does not mean anything in terms of like, the fighters or the fans who love Douglas Lima, who love Rory McDonald, they're going to see him anyway, whether or not they say one word at the press conference or 100 words. But, you know what I'm saying? I think it helps the casual appeal always, and that's something that, it needs to be taught. It's not something that everyone just has, and Chael Sonnen being the fighter, being the guy who brought that, maybe he could teach that to a fighter more talented than him that could actually back up some. I don't mean to be too mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's that just kind of breaking down that ideal. I think it would be a fun idea, you know what I'm saying, to entertain, but obviously for now he's just going to ride off into the sunset. He's got his thing set up, and he's still on ESPN, so he's gonna have plenty of time in front of the camera. He's not going anywhere, but he will obviously be away from the cage. But yeah, just wanted to commend a great career and a great villain, you know what I'm saying, of MMA that we haven't had and probably won't have for a long time. And real quick before we hop into UFC news, I wanted to stay on Bellator for one more topic. This card had two pretty up and coming talents, Dylan Dennis and Aaron Pico. Obviously, they had two very different outcomes on the night, and I just find it interesting. With Aaron Pico, obviously he fought. Who did he fight again? What was his name? Yeah, it's like
Oh my goodness.
Beltrons, something like that.
I want to say no, Adam Borix.
Adam Borix. Okay, yeah, Borix. So him fighting Borix, Henry Hooft trained fighter. You know what I'm saying? And then Dylan Dennis fighting, and I don't want to say Dylan Dennis fought a trash can, but you know what I'm saying. I think that the pedigree and opponents is completely different, and then you see Dylan Dennis go through his win, not really challenged. He got to show off, you know, his jiu-jitsu, the hallmarks of his game, and Aaron Pico, you know, looked great in the first round, but then got frustrated, you know, started trying to switch up his game plan, and he, you know, just ate that knee that, you know, depending on the matchup, on, you know, a different fighter maybe within his you know, number of fights, it wouldn't have been there. But, you know, fighting the guy that he fought, he ended up taking another L, and you know, it starts to make me think, like, I'm looking at, you know, long term for both of these fighters. How does this benefit their careers? Obviously, Aaron Pico's career is far from over, but there is a question to be had of, like, how much damage is too much damage 5 fights into your career. You know, how much resistance is not enough resistance in terms of Dylan Dennis when it comes to his first 5 fights in Bellator. And, you know, I want to harken back to a little bit of Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page was, you know, like one of those mystic aura fighters of Bellator. Wasn't fighting often, but when he did fight, he, you know, brought the headlines. And then the first real challenge that he faced, he kind of crumbled under pressure. I mean, obviously Douglas Lima, you know, he's gonna beat nine guys out of 10, and Michael Venom Page is surely, you know, not within that caliber of, like, can beat Douglas Lima on a regular basis. But the way that he crumbled, the way that, you know, he's kind of has been out of the spotlight since then, kind of makes me wonder if Scott Coker is thinking differently about the way he brings up these fighters, how often they fight, how dangerous of a fight they're getting into each time that they're stepping into the cage. And it's almost as like an experiment that's being played. I don't know, you know, who Aaron Pico is with right now with his management. Are they accepting these fights? Is it just what Bellator is giving them? I'm not really sure what's going on there. But Siri, how do you play that out? If you're coaching a young fighter, which is the approach that you want them to take, and what is quote unquote the best way to bring up a fighter?
So, first off, I want to say this. It's not Borix, it's Boric. I wondered after I said Borix because I saw a flag that was either Italian or he's or Hungarian.
Yeah.
One of those two things. Mm-hmm. So the CS, I'm pretty sure it's Boric. So we'll say Adam Boric from now.
All right, gotcha.
So I don't know enough about Dylan Dennis. So I take it from what you've told me, and to compare the two. I'll say this. It surprises me because, I mean, obviously Boric isn't a killer, but I think he was undefeated coming into the fight.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Let me ask you this. Bellator was so high on Aaron Pico for a while. Do you think they have the option to feed him lesser fighters?
Yes, because in the undercard was littered with, you know, fighters that were 1-0. Some of them were debuting, you know, getting their MMA debut. Obviously, their amateur pedigree varied, but Bellator are not afraid of signing first-time fighters in an effort to, you know, galvanize the local support in the area. They did that at MSG. They've done it before. So I think it's definitely it's within their wheelhouse, and I would even go as to say that it would be cheaper, you know, getting that first time fighter that's local or whatever to go against Aaron Pico than it is to get a seasoned, you know, 3-4 fight Bellator guy, you know. So it just depends.
Another thing, do you think that maybe Bellator thinks Aaron Pico was good enough that was a winnable fight for him? So is it really irresponsible? Because the thing is, it doesn't seem like Aaron Pico's not getting outclassed.
Mm-hmm.
It's really he does the fights he's lost. He did really well and then got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Either got lazy on defense or like when he's brawling or just in the thick of it, he gets caught by one big shot and that's it.
Right, and I think that's a very important point to make. Like, it's not like he's going out there and getting starched, a la CM Punk or anything like that.
I mean,
He's competitive.
He was doing great against Boris.
Right.
That was his fight to lose.
Yeah, he's 100% competitive, and obviously, in hindsight is 2020. You can always say, "Oh, it was too much too soon."
I think
what a hype beast.
Management, even if you're Coker, I think putting him against Boris, I mean, yeah, like you said, hindsight is 2020, but I think they expected him to beat him, and he proved him right for most of the fight. It feels like there's no easy solution, mostly because the aforementioned he just got caught.
Yeah.
Because if your fighter has won most of the fight against someone, and they just get caught, do you really want to step down in competition? Can you focus a fighter? Do you change anything if he just got caught? If he's just ducked into a knee, yeah, you can say, hey, listen, let's not telegraph our takedowns, but that's really basic. And and as a young fighter, they may lose sight of that in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm not even sure how much you'd coach from this loss.
Yeah,
I think as weird as it sounds, I would say Aaron Pico should stay the course.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're not going to get caught. If you get caught every fight, then he's not as good as we think he is. So that's an entirely different issue.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to get caught by a lucky big shot to put you out every fight. And I think if he just stays at this level, he'll accumulate the type of wins that will let us know what skill level he's at. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that he has he got that flying knee. But, I mean, I think he's fine. I think he can stay the course.
Right, and again, with both of these guys, the reason why we're even talking about them in the first place is because they're insanely talented. In one respect, Dylan Dennis's jiu-jitsu, Aaron Pico's boxing and wrestling pedigree. So they have their rights to be here, obviously. And then it's just a matter of improving on that. Aaron Pico, he did switch camps before this fight. I think he went to Jackson Wink. So I'm not saying move from Jackson Wink just because of this loss or anything like that. Stay the course, regroup, and just ultimately maybe, I don't know. I think it's a mentality change. It has to be something where, maybe he's, I don't know. It has to be something in the training, something in the sparring. Maybe I don't want to say up the intensity or anything like that. Obviously I'm pulling at strings here, but the moral of the story is that he can't be swayed by this, obviously. And, the media is going to talk and they're going to say what they want to say about Boric. And I think he was just on the MMA Hour yesterday saying that maybe the hype was too much for Pico. I don't think it's anything like that. It's just, this is the game of MMA. Sometimes you get caught. Sometimes you're the nail. Sometimes you're the hammer. I mean, it happened to Chael Sonnen. And it can happen to pretty much anybody else on any given night. But he is 21 years old. He is, super green to the game, and he's only going to get better. I mean, there's still obviously, like, you see the potential, you see the ceiling that he's capable of, but he's nowhere near the actualized potential. So there is definitely time to make those adjustments, and he has the right backing to do it. And I'm sure that Aaron Pico can, and let's not forget, I mean, he was finishing people with, consecutive left hooks to the body. Like, he was on his own, murder spree before this, so I'm pretty sure he can get back on course in no time. So that's going to wrap it up for Bellator. Let's really quick hop into the UFC news. And I wanted to start with, there was a Twitter article going around talking about the win, or actually one of our writers on the Body Lock was talking about the win percentages of Contender Series fighters post Contender Series, how they're faring, and I think it was something at like 48% win rate between all the Contender Series fighters, and how they're how they're faring since that. I mean, obviously, there's notable names there: Sean O'Malley, different guys up and down the board. I'm fucking blanking on names. It's crazy. But I do believe this is a topic that I wanted to bring up. First off, I do think the UFC is leading the charge when it comes to um improving the game of MMA nationally and internationally. They're opening up UFC PIs everywhere. One in Chile, one in China. They're hosting events, raising awareness for the sport in ways that is truly making the game better for everyone. And I think they're leading that charge. As the leader, some people know UFC more than they know the actual sport of MMA. When you're in a position like that, you have to lead by example. And I think the UFC, for the most part, I think they do a really good job at doing that. And the Contender Series is a perfect example of that. And real quick, I just wanted to talk about, I look at the Contender Series and I compare it to Tough. And if Tough is college, let's say, if Tough is a 4-year university, I feel like the Contender Series is like this, like, hey, you want to make a couple bucks? Like some dude on the side of the alley, when you're walking home from school, tells you about a get rich quick scheme, and it's like, hey, one shot, either use it or lose it. You know what I'm saying? That is what the Contender Series feels like to me, where it's like you can get vaulted extremely high if you do show out. But obviously they don't reward decision wins. They're really looking for first round knockout kind of people. And really interesting fighters have come from this cloth, but I'm just not sure it's the best for longevity. When you compare, I guess the paths to pro on these two, where do you lean on? What's more exciting? What's better for the viewer? Where do you stand on this between contenders?
So in terms of viewer and excitement, I think it is the Contender Series. Unfortunately,
yeah.
I say unfortunately because I think even with the exception of maybe, I'm trying to think. I watched, I want to say, through the first 13 seasons of The Ultimate Fighter or so, but because there's a ridiculous number of seasons, I think.
Yeah.
Because every time they had like a new title match or a new rivalry, they were just like, all right, give them a season of Tough. But it might have been the first 8. But past the first few, it was a running joke for a while too. But the Ultimate Fighter never produced elite fighters.
Yeah.
Like the first few seasons produced world champions, but after that they were just kind of middling. Not even a lot of them took pay-per-view spots. Mostly because I feel like most of the fighters that are guaranteed UFC caliber have already been fighting in promotions that might not be as large as the UFC, but is much better than the Ultimate Fighter. You know what I mean? Because like think about like a Division I college team. The people who have to try out aren't the best because the best have already been signed. They didn't have to do anything. They went to the best and said, "We want you," and that's how the UFC has been as well.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean.
So yeah, the Ultimate Fighter. I like the tournament format and everything, but as the talent pool has gone down, and some of it, even though more MMA is becoming more and more popular, it's just when you want to first get your show off the ground, you stack it with as much talent as possible. Yeah. Like look at a bunch of reality shows. Any reality competition show. I'm a huge fan of Ink Master, but like as the seasons go on, you realize that like they stack the talent so heavily in the early seasons to get it off. There's not always world-beating talent left.
Right. And there are outliers like Kamaru Usman, Tony Ferguson. They've risen up.
And the thing is, when that happens, they're usually so far above the rest of the competition, it's not worth watching.
Yeah.
Okay, who's basically going to win the tournament. Heck, remember when Roy Nelson won the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, the season with Kimbo and stuff.
He had kind of the least personality out of almost everyone there, and he won, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, and I think
he got belly down on everyone during the tournament, and then I think he knocked out Brendan Schaub, and that was it. The Contender Series at least does not stretch it over an entire season of our shows. The Contender Series is brief, it's marketable to casuals, And so, and because they like knockouts, you can sign them and you're guaranteed a little bit of money if they perform like that in the league. So I think the UFC, the tough system is flawed enough at this point that there's nothing to lose with the Contender Series.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, unfortunately, I'm okay with the Contender Series.
Yeah, and the tough is continuing. They did sign for a couple more seasons when they got the ESPN deal. I'm
The
hoping.
coaches are the best part of tough now.
Yeah,
I don't
for
care
sure.
about the fighters anymore.
For sure, yeah, the fighters are kind of a flash in the pan, depending. Sometimes there's really interesting faces, sometimes not, and but you're right. There definitely has been a watering down with the seasons as it comes. Once you're scouring the planet looking for the best options, you've already done several seasons of Brazil, several seasons in the U.S. Like there's only so much you can do, so it makes sense. But I do agree. I think the Contender Series, it is the better product. I don't know if it's necessarily the best grooming tool. If I'm a Contender Series fighter, the first thing I'm doing is going to Las Vegas, though. Get myself in the PI, start figuring out everything I need, because you need whatever bit of advancement you can take with you. You know what I'm saying? When you're not necessarily a six-figure fighter, and that's definitely like step one. But I do. There's something so pivotal about the structure of Contender Series and how it breaks up, and I think they are on the cusp of like really breaking out with it, but I think we need to see more stars come up before I can say for sure, oh, this is a net positive for new fighters coming into the league. But real quick, I wanted to touch on before we jump ship and talk about some bare knuckle boxing, we got to talk about UFC Fight Night 154, Renato Moicano versus Korean Zombie. I know you're aficionado of the Korean Zombie. I personally am a big fan of Renato Moicano. Siri, how do you see this one breaking down?
Man, it depends on which Korean Zombie shows up.
Yeah.
Even though he was winning against Yair Rodriguez before that crazy elbow knockout, he looked like he regressed. He was chasing with his punches. It looked like he was willing to just eat punches again. And I know he's had long injury layoffs, but the best fight I've ever seen from him still, and it's a fight not enough people watch, is Korean Zombie when he first fought Dustin Poirier. And if you look at that Korean Zombie, incredible movement, incredible grappling, great counters, knew where he needed to be to land what shot. If he shows up, then we're gonna have a great fight on our hands, because I don't think Moicano can just blast Jung. He'll land. Moicano has fast hands. Mm-hmm. We know that much. I don't know if he can survive a brawl. Mm-hmm. But if Jung is slow and he lets Moicano get off, like if he lets Moicano just dodge in and out and just land clean shots,
right,
I think it's an easy win for Moicano.
Yeah.
So I hope Jung wins, but I think his performance has been inconsistent, and with his long layoffs, I would count on Moicano at least. It's only 3 rounds, so I think an easy decision win.
Yeah, for sure. I think since it's the main event, it's 5 rounds.
It is. Oh, it is the main event.
Yeah.
I thought it was second to last. Yeah. Okay, so 5 rounds.
No, yeah.
In that case, I could see a TKO victory for him if he really slows Jung down.
Yeah. I could see that too. I think it's all about who starts first, setting the tempo, getting comfortable. Whoever can get into their groove faster is who's gonna get more shots off. I think Moicano has the more developed arsenal, and that could give him some more angles, give him some more stuff to work with. But at the same time, Korean Zombie, he has intangibles that, again, if it leads to a brawl, he has what it takes to make it go his way. But from what Moicano went through in his last fight, I think he's going to be looking to play it safe, keep it tight, and just look for the victory the easiest way possible, and that's just going to be shutting him out. I think it's going to be a shutout. You know what I'm saying?
It's hard, but he doesn't hit Jose Aldo sitting down on his punches hard.
Yeah, right.
So he won't have to worry about those kind of counters.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those things where as long as he's not overwhelmed by his opponent, and again, it's all about starting off strong. in this situation with Moicano. If he can just temper, he is a slow starter. If he can temper it in the right way, and not be overwhelmed by the forward pressure from Korean Zombie, then I think he should be fine. Speaking of forward pressure, really wanted to get into this next fight, John Lineker versus Rob Font. I mean, talk about a slobber knocker.
It will be a whatever. If it doesn't win fight of the night at the end of this, I would love to know what fight could possibly get out in front of that. Actually, only the main event. I think only Jung Moicano has a chance to.
Right, on paper.
On paper, yeah. I mean, anything can happen. It's the fight game, but only looking at it on paper, only Jung Moicano has a chance to knock Font Lineker from fight of the night candidate.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of those. I love Rob Font. I think he's kind of like the prototype of bantamweight. He's like what every bantamweight should look like. I feel like he's not necessarily like fight style wise. It's just like physically. I think he's the perfect build for the division. And he's been putting together, a pretty great resume. Just knocking names out. But at the same time, Lineker has pretty much developed the same kind of pedigree with none of those physical attributes. He's just straight up hands of stone. Left followed by the right, and he's going to find his way to his target. And I think, I don't know, like, I think this fight is going to come down to Lineker's chin. If Lineker can withstand, Font's best punches in that first round, and just be like, okay, this is what you got, cool. Heading into the second and third, I think Lineker will will break him down, make him turn corners, and boom. But at the same time, again, it's those physical abilities that Rob Font has. I think he's gifted and he's fast enough to stay out of the danger zone when it comes to Lineker's hands. And I can see. I can't see this fight being boring, but I can definitely see a way in which Rob Font would have to fight in order to not get knocked the fuck out. That would make it boring, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. I think Rob Font does have both the physical and technical abilities to get the win, though.
So, for me, I do think Rob Font is really good. One of the fights that I really analyzed. Okay, Pedro Munoz. Pedro Munoz lost his most recent fight, but the reason I'm so high on him is because he beat Rob Font in a stand-up battle. Mm-hmm. So that's the type of regard I hold Rob Font's stand-up in.
Yeah.
That being said, Lineker may never challenge for a title in this division, but in order to beat him or even not get knocked out by him, you have to do one of two things. You have to, one, be really fast. You have to go in and out, be able to change levels and make him miss. And Sandhagen did it, and he barely did it. Mm-hmm. But Corey Sandhagen's also incredibly talented, highly underrated. Mm-hmm. The second way is you have to be a good wrestler that can hold him down. That's how Dillashaw managed to land a few takedowns on him, and that was really what completely flattened it out and gave him an easy unanimous decision. Mm-hmm. Font, I don't think, is going to try to take down. Well, he might try to take down Lineker. I don't think he can rely on him. That's not to say Font isn't a good wrestler. It's just not his style. He's also not an in and out, like, feathery footwork kind of guy. That doesn't mean he doesn't move well, but it's not the type of pace you need to make Lineker miss. Eventually, maybe not in the first round, but surely come in the second, he's going to find himself trying to trade with Lineker, and no one trades with Lineker. Like, no one plants their feet and just swings at John Lineker and wins. And I think eventually, at some point in time, it's going to come down to that. And I think Lineker can just beat him silly for it. So I think it'll be a TKO maybe in the third round.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And you're right. There's ways in which Lineker baits you, into the scenarios where he does get, very potent in the stand up. I don't know. That's why I have a feeling that Rob Font, approach wise, he's going to handle this a little bit differently. And that's what's going to be the difference maker. But yeah, honestly, this is the one that you're going to have to mark on the fight card when it comes up, because it's going to be nothing but a fireworks show. But let's transition. We covered UFC, we covered Bellator. Now we're gonna take a little, we're the Body Lock MMA. Huh?
Speak. The gloves are coming off, so to speak.
Exactly. The gloves are coming off because we're going to talk about bare knuckle. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, I forgot to talk about this on the last podcast. Your boy did get media credentials. I will be on scene live at the press conference, at the weigh-ins, which, by the way, are tomorrow and the day after. And on Saturday, fight night, I'll be backstage trying to get the best content out there on the YouTube channel for the Body Lock. So if you're already watching the podcast here, stay tuned for the interviews that will be on the same channel, and they will be crisp quality because I have a great microphone and a good camera that I'm bringing. It's gonna be good stuff, and I'm excited. This is kind of like my first real, media backstage gig, so I'm excited to see how that goes.
Please bring it on the next show.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm so intrigued by this fight. At first, I thought, I don't care. I'm not interested. I could give a shit about Artem Lobov, Paulie Malignaggi. But the closer we get to this fight, the more I'm just like, what the hell is going to happen? Because this is, just removing the names, removing the history. This is a former pro boxer, elite pedigreed guy, fighting a bare knuckle in a small circle against a, people's GOAT. Losing record MMA fighter with heavy hands, you know what I'm saying? Durable.
A boxer who used to box against a boxer who used to fight MMA.
Yeah, and I don't know. I styles make fights. Paulie Malignaggi is a little bit older than Lobov. He's not necessarily in his prime. This is going to be interesting, I think. And I think this is all just setup. This is all just a setup. I don't believe Paulie Malignaggi is going to have a long career in bare knuckle fighting, but I do think this is going to be the kind of fight that is the launching pad towards something else. And what I'm hoping for, if Malignaggi wins, is a boxing fight with yours truly, Conor McGregor. I think that would be it would be a fun way to get his foot in the door, and that's something that I'm really interested in asking him. I think. Man, the dynamics of this fight are so interesting. I just watched a preview for the fight on the Mac Life, and it's just comical how much the MMA fans hate Paulie Malignaggi, and Paulie Malignaggi hates the MMA fans. I mean, he was literally quoted saying that the fan base was so stupid that's how this fight got brought up in the first place, because people actually wanted to see this. He's like, this is a freak show.
How do MMA fans hate Paulie Malignaggi more than they hate Artem Lobov?
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I mean, I'm talking. I guess I was on the Mac Life YouTube channel, so they wouldn't necessarily be the most hateful towards Lobov. I mean, there is a big group of people that obviously take Lobov for what he is. But this was definitely not the group. But I also love it because they vehemently defend Lobov just as much as they hate Malignaggi. So that's what makes this so vitriolic, so fun. And I think Malignaggi has everything at the table to get a big win over a not so great opponent and get what he wants out of it. Past this and get an actual big money fight. Because that's what he wants to do. I mean, he's one of those guys that he retired, he got healthy, and then he got bored. And it's like, fuck it, I want to get back in the ring. I want to do something, and I think that this fight is the kind of fight that, gets him up out of bed because, Artem Lobov, he is also, I mean, you should have seen him in this Mac Life preview. He is a showman. He's trying to get out there and sell tickets just as much as Malignaggi, and that's what makes this, to me, as compelling as it is to watch, and I'm really excited for what's to come on Saturday.
I mean, you're the BKB guy, so if you can get on camera, I'll watch.
For sure.
We need some ostentatious signal.
Yeah.
We need a TBL pride flag.
Yeah.
Just because the camera will focus on it, everyone will be like, "Hey, look at that guy," and then I'll be like, "Hey, there's Nick."
Yeah, we'll invent some TBL gang signs or something. I don't know. No. But yeah, I think there's a lot of again, this isn't really a styles make fights kind of fight. This is more narratives make fights. And I'm just interested to see what's gonna happen because I honestly have no idea. Chris Lieben's also fighting. Joe Riggs is on this card as well. There's a lot of like out of left field names that are coming out of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, and I'm just excited to see how that's gonna break down. The first time ever, being on scene like this, and hopefully not the last. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
Well, that just about wraps it up for the Body Lock podcast. We're gonna start over from scratch because our old YouTube channel got banned, sent to the nether realm. So we are starting. This is technically episode number 2, but we've had a couple. If you could find the old ones, cool, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah. What did we do?
I don't know. I think it was like I can't remember. I think maybe it was like one of our thumbnails or some stupid. You know how YouTube is. But hopefully this one doesn't get banned too. But really appreciate everything for watching. We're gonna be putting this out there, and again, stay tuned to this YouTube channel. We're gonna be putting great content up all weekend long, starting tomorrow actually with the press conference. So stay tuned. And for everyone from the TBL podcast, peace.
See you next week.
Yank.